In a world that shouts, there's rare power in those who stay calm. There's a quiet, unshakable strength that lives in the moments we choose not to react. In a world that glorifies outrage, rewards impatience, and fuels impulsive behavior, the ability to remain centered, to feel deeply without being controlled by what we feel, has become almost a lost art. The Stoics taught us a timeless truth. We are not disturbed by what happens to us, but by the stories we attach to those events. Still, how often do we surrender our peace to the noise of the world? How often do we give our power away to a careless insult, a moment of discomfort, or someone else's emotional chaos? Today is your invitation to reclaim that power, because true freedom doesn't come from trying to control everything that happens in life. It comes from learning to control how you respond to it. And no, this isn't about suppressing how you feel. It's about becoming the master of the space between what happens and what you choose to do next. That gap, that pause, that's where your real strength lives. That's the moment you become untouchable. If what I'm saying resonates with something deep in you, I encourage you, like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and stay with me as we explore the forgotten strength hidden in stillness. Chapter 1. Understanding your emotional triggers. Every emotional reaction carries a message. Every outburst, every silent withdrawal, every tear. It's not just about now. Often, it's a whisper from the past, a wound left behind when we were too young, too unguarded, too unaware to protect ourselves. To truly gain emotional mastery, we must become patient students of our inner world. We must learn to read these emotional signals like faded letters written across the landscape of our memory. Think about the last time you overreacted. Maybe someone dismissed your idea, and before you could even breathe, anger rose like a wave. Or someone ignored you, and the sting felt far deeper than the situation seemed to justify. That reaction, that surge, wasn't just about the present beneath it. There's a history. Moments from childhood when you felt invisible. Betrayals that taught you to guard your pride. Fears that were never spoken out loud. These are your emotional triggers, the hidden scripts that direct your reactions, often without your permission. Marcus Aurelius, a Stoic emperor, once wrote, "If you are pained by any external thing, it is not this thing that disturbs you, but your judgment about it." But where do those judgments come from, if not from the most formative and vulnerable parts of us? To take back control of our emotional lives, we must stop treating reactions as isolated accidents. They are clues, surface symptoms of deeper emotional structures built over years of experience. And this inner work begins with awareness, not judgment, not shame, just presence. So next time a strong emotion rises, pause. Ask yourself, what am I really reacting to? Is it truly this moment, or something older, deeper? Notice the patterns. Maybe criticism cuts too deep. Maybe being excluded always triggers a quiet panic. Your answers don't need to be perfect, only honest. This is where emotional freedom begins. Let me know when you're ready to move on to page 2, or if you want the Vietnamese translation side by side. Sometimes, when you're misunderstood, it stirs up an old loneliness, the kind you thought you had outgrown years ago. But these emotions, they're not signs of weakness. They're invitations, subtle, powerful calls to understand yourself more deeply. Self-awareness is the bridge between being ruled by your emotions and being able to direct them. Imagine walking into a dark room filled with scattered furniture and sharp corners. Without light, every step is risky. You stumble, bump into things, maybe even fall. But when you switch on the light, when you bring awareness into that space, you begin to move with clarity and intention. You don't curse the darkness anymore. You simply navigate it, wisely, calmly. And that's where a profound Stoic truth lives. The goal isn't to eliminate all emotional triggers. The goal is to see them clearly, to shine a light on them so they lose their invisible grip over you. Epictetus once taught that external events are neutral. What gives them meaning, what gives them emotional charge is our interpretation, our history, our unhealed wounds. When you uncover the roots of your reactions, you begin your journey back to neutrality. And from there, toward freedom. Of course, this journey doesn't happen overnight. It unfolds gradually, day by day, through the steady practices of observation, reflection, and compassion toward yourself. Sometimes you'll catch a trigger before it ignites. Other times it'll catch you off guard. And that's okay. That is the process. Every moment of awareness is progress. Every realization is a brick laid in the foundation of your emotional resilience. So ask yourself regularly, where did this reaction really begin? Is this emotion truly about the present? Or am I carrying an old story into this moment? With time, you'll notice something shift. The emotional waves that used to knock you down won't hit as hard. You'll stand firmer, not because life gets easier, but because you grow stronger. Understanding your emotional triggers isn't about becoming numb, it's about becoming free. Free to feel without being controlled. Free to respond without being trapped. Free to live without dragging the invisible weight of a past that no longer serves you. This is the quiet revolution inside you, the beginning of unshakable peace. Chapter 2. Noticing the body, your built-in emotional alarm system. Before your mind has a chance to label what you're feeling, your body already knows. Long before you say, "I'm angry" or "I'm anxious," your body whispers the truth. A quickened heartbeat, a sudden tightness in the chest, tension building in your shoulders, a shallow breath you didn't realize you were holding. Your body is the first messenger of emotion, and when you learn to listen to it, it becomes one of your most faithful allies on the path to emotional mastery. Yet so many of us live disconnected from our bodies. We're caught up in our heads, racing through tasks, distracted by thoughts, numb to the subtle shifts happening within us all day long. But every emotion carries a physical signature. Anger may tighten your jaw. Anxiety might flutter in your stomach. Sadness could settle in your chest like a stone. These aren't random sensations. They're your early warning signals, quiet at first, louder if ignored, designed to bring your awareness back to the present, back to yourself. Those Stoic writings focused more on the mind. Their essence reflected deep self-awareness in all forms. Marcus Aurelius often described watching his own thoughts like an outside observer, not to judge, but to understand. Today, we take this wisdom one step further. True observation begins not just in the mind, but in the body, the very place where every reaction is born. By tuning in to your physical responses, you reclaim the sacred pause between what happens and how you respond. You no longer get swept away by emotion. Instead, you feel the first ripple and say, "Ah, something is happening within me." And in that moment of noticing, everything begins to change. Because in that moment of recognition, when you notice what's happening inside, you open a quiet, powerful door. It's not a grand, dramatic entrance. but a subtle threshold. On one side is instinct and automatic reaction, on the other, conscious choice. This is where you stop being a prisoner of reflex. This is where you become an active participant in your own experience. When a situation stirs emotion within you, train yourself to pause, to turn inward before you act outward. Instead of snapping back with a defensive comment, breathe into the tension that's rising in your chest. Instead of shutting down with silent resentment, gently place your hand over your heart and simply feel the rhythm of your breath and your pulse. Ask yourself, what is my body telling me? Before my mind jumps in to explain it away. This practice of embodied awareness is incredibly simple, but it's not always easy. It asks for presence. It asks for patience. It asks for the courage to feel discomfort without running from it, because, in many ways, your body is more honest than your mind. The mind can lie, deny, and distort, but the body, it tells the truth, directly, plainly. If you feel unsafe, your shoulders tense. If you feel invisible, your breath shallows. These physical cues are not signs of weakness. They are signals. They're invitations to pause, to understand, and to reclaim control. And if you can catch them early enough, you can respond wisely. A few slow, steady breaths can calm the storm before it turns into chaos. A simple release of tension in your shoulders can send a message of safety back through your nervous system. Slowing your breath can interrupt the spiral of anxiety before it consumes you. Emotional mastery doesn't mean you never feel strong emotions. It means you learn to ride the wave rather than drown in it. Seneca once wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." And so much of that suffering comes from missing the body's early warnings, from letting the imagination run wild, while the body whispers, unheard. But when you anchor yourself in physical sensation, in what is real, right now you strip the emotion of its destructive force. You return to the present, where clarity still exists, where choice still lives. Imagine your body as a living early warning system, a compass that alerts you to incoming emotional storms. Each signal is a chance to take a different path, to step back, to breathe, to respond with wisdom instead of reflex. This isn't about repression. It's not avoidance. It is, in fact, the highest form of emotional respect. Listening fully before acting, and with practice, it becomes part of you. You begin to move through life with a deeper sensitivity. Not hypersensitivity, but awareness. You'll notice the flicker of anger before it becomes rage, the tightening of anxiety before it turns to panic. And because you notice, you can navigate. You can choose patience over impulsiveness, calm over chaos, clarity over confusion. Noticing. Your body isn't just a small self-help habit, it is the foundation of emotional control. Because if we can't feel what's happening inside us clearly, we're forever at the mercy of what happens outside us. Master your internal signals, and you begin to master the external storms. Chapter 3, Creating a Pause Before You React. There is a moment so tiny, so subtle, between the stimulus and your response. A sliver of time where your freedom lives. Most people miss it entirely. They jump straight from emotion to reaction, like a spark hitting dry grass. But the greatest strength you can build is the ability to find that space, to stretch it out, and to live inside it. This is where real mastery begins. Not in suppressing how you feel, not in pretending you're unaffected, but in learning to choose your response, instead of being hijacked by impulse. The world praises quick reactions. Be fast, be sharp, don't hesitate. But true wisdom moves differently. It doesn't rush, it doesn't flinch, it waits, it listens, and then it responds. The Stoics understood this truth long before modern psychology ever did. Epictetus taught that while we cannot control external events, we can always control our judgment about them. And that judgment, that pause, is where your freedom is born. We just explored the power of the pause, that tiny space between stimulus and response, where you can choose instead of react. Now let's go deeper. How do you actually create that pause in real life? Because in that pause, judgment happens, and without it, we become nothing more than puppets, pulled by the strings of our surroundings. Creating a pause isn't easy, especially at first. Our biology is wired for speed, fight, flight, or freeze. When we feel threatened, insulted, or embarrassed, the body is flooded with energy, ready to act. This instinct used to save lives. Today, it ruins conversations, relationships, and careers. In today's world, it's not the strongest who thrive, but those who can breathe through the first wave of emotion and choose a response that aligns with their deepest values, not their momentary feelings. So how do we build this pause? It begins with something very simple: breathing. When you feel a strong emotion rising, don't speak, don't react, just breathe. One slow, conscious breath can interrupt the chain of impulsivity. It tells your nervous system, you're not in danger, you have time, you're safe enough to think. Then comes inner reflection. As you inhale and exhale, ask yourself silently, what am I about to do? Is it necessary? Is it kind? Is it wise? These questions create just enough distance between you and your emotion so you can see it more clearly. Not as a master you must obey, but as a messenger you can either listen to or let go. At first, this will feel strange. You may feel awkward choosing to breathe instead of snap back. You might feel exposed when you pause, especially when everything inside you screams for action. But over time, something deeper begins to emerge, a quiet kind of strength, one that cannot be provoked, one that stays grounded even as the winds of anger, fear, or shame try to shake you. Marcus Aurelius said it perfectly. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Notice, he didn't say you will find weakness. He said you will find strength. And strength lives in restraint, not reactivity. In your quiet refusal to be dragged around by fleeting emotions, that's where you'll find your unshakable center. The practice of pausing does not mean becoming passive. It's not about letting people walk over you. It's not about staying silent when action is needed. It's about choosing your actions consciously. Sometimes, even after the pause, you may still need to speak up, to defend a boundary, to express a need. But the difference is, you will act from clarity, not chaos, from principle, not panic. Think of yourself as a musician. Every note matters, but so do the silences between the notes. Without the pauses, music turns to noise, and your life is no different. Every word you speak, every action you take, it's part of a song you're composing. A song of character, of intention, of mastery. The pauses, they are not empty. They are where meaning is made. So train yourself gently, patiently, to live in the pause. Start small. When someone says something annoying, pause. When fear grips you after a mistake, pause. When pride tempts you to lash out, pause, even one deep breath, 1 second of reflection, can completely shift the direction of a moment. And sometimes the direction of a relationship, a career, a life. Over time, the pause will grow. What once felt like an impossible effort will become your natural rhythm. You'll no longer be a slave to every emotion that passes through you. You'll be free, free to choose, free to respond, free to remain peaceful, even when the world around you is falling apart. Create the pause, live in it, protect it. Because in that small, sacred space between stimulus and response, you hold the key to an unbreakable life. Rewritten script. Page 5 English version. After learning to live fully in the present, you now have a steady anchor to face your emotions. Now, we go even deeper into the inner world, where all emotional reactions begin. Mindfulness becomes your anchor. It doesn't stop the storm, but it keeps you from being swept away. It doesn't eliminate sorrow or anger, but it gives you the space to hold them gently, to see them clearly, and to respond with wisdom, not reflex. And here's the profound truth: the life you're searching for, the peace you're chasing, the strength you're longing to find, they're not hiding somewhere far away. They are right here, in this breath, in this step, in this conversation. Always here, always waiting for you to notice. Practice mindfulness in your daily life, and you'll discover presence isn't just a skill. It's a homecoming back to the truest version of yourself. Chapter 5. Cultivating. Deep self-awareness to know yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. Yet in a world that constantly pulls your attention outward, toward news, noise, and the never-ending movement of others turning inward has become a rare, most radical act. Self-awareness is not just noticing what you do. It's about understanding why you do it. It's the art of holding a mirror up to your own mind without distortion, without defense, and without fear. Most people live in reaction to themselves, not in relationship with themselves. They move through life pulled by moods they don't understand, by desires they can't explain, by fears they refuse to name. Without self-awareness, emotions don't serve us. They rule us. But when you begin to cultivate deep self-awareness, you start to see every thought, every feeling, every reaction is not some random event, but a thread carefully woven into the fabric of your inner world. The Stoics urged relentless self-reflection. Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations, "When you arise in the morning, think of what a precious privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love." But he also filled page after page questioning his own motives, examining his impulses, and observing his judgments. This wasn't self-criticism, it was self-clarity. And without clarity, freedom is impossible. Cultivating self-awareness begins with one essential habit: observation without judgment. Notice your thoughts as they pass through your mind. Watch your emotions rise and fall like waves. When anger shows up, pause and observe it. What triggered it? What story am I telling myself right now? When sadness arrives, sit with it. Where do I feel it in my body? What memory or expectation might be fueling it? This isn't about fixing your emotions. It's about understanding them, like an astronomer studying the stars, with curiosity, not condemnation. Journaling is a powerful companion on this path. Not the polished, pretty kind with perfect grammar and deep insights, but the raw, unfiltered act of mapping your inner world onto paper. Write your fears, write your frustrations, write your dreams and your doubts. See them outside yourself, and in doing so, loosen their invisible grip on you. A thought written down is a thought made visible, and what is visible can be understood. What is understood can be transformed. Self-awareness also asks for the courage to face uncomfortable truths. It's easy to notice when others wrong us, harder to notice when we cling to being the victim. Easy to spot injustice done to us, much harder to admit when our pride clouds our vision. But true self-awareness means facing even the parts of ourselves we'd rather avoid, not with harshness, not with shame, but with quiet, courageous honesty that says, this too is a part of me, and because I see it, I am no longer controlled by it. Seneca once wrote, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself. In the same way, no one is more lost than the person who never looks within." Because when you refuse to face your inner truth, you become like a ship without a rudder, tossed around by every emotional storm. But when you truly know yourself, your strengths, your weaknesses, your habits, your emotional triggers, you can steer your life with intention. Self-awareness isn't a destination. After beginning your journey of self-awareness, you'll realize something essential. This is not a destination. It's a lifelong conversation with yourself. A continuous, evolving dialogue of listening and understanding. Day by day, there will be days when you feel clear, grounded, fully in tune with your emotions as they rise. And there will be days when you stumble, fall into old habits, or miss the inner signals completely. That too is part of the path. What matters is not perfection, but persistence. Every moment of honest observation, no matter how small, strengthens your capacity to live with intention rather than reaction. And as you cultivate self-awareness, you also begin to develop something just as powerful: compassion, first for yourself, and then for others. You begin to see that everyone is carrying their own invisible battles, their own private storms. You become less quick to judge and more inclined to understand. This quiet shift in perspective changes the way you move through the world. It brings a kind of inner stillness, a rootedness that no external chaos can easily shake. When you truly see yourself, both your light and your shadow, you're no longer manipulated by praise or destroyed by criticism. You begin to anchor yourself in something deeper than opinion, deeper than circumstance. You anchor yourself in the unshakable truth of who you are. And when you cultivate deep self-awareness, you no longer live at the mercy of unconscious forces within you. You become the quiet master of your own mind, not through force, but through the patient, courageous act of seeing clearly. Chapter 6. Labeling and accepting emotions. You can't master what you refuse to name. Emotions are like waves. They rise, they crest, they break. And if you don't know what wave you're riding, you're far more likely to be dragged under, swept into actions you'll later regret. To develop emotional control, you must first build emotional literacy, the ability to recognize what you feel, to call it by its true name, and to sit with it without panic, without judgment. It sounds simple, but it's not. Most of us were never taught to name our emotions. We were taught that anger is bad, sadness is weakness, fear is failure. We were taught to suppress the uncomfortable, to dismiss what felt inconvenient. But suppression is not control. Denial is not mastery. What we push away only grows stronger in the dark. Despite their reputation for emotional restraint, the Stoics never taught us to ignore emotions. They taught us to understand them. Seneca once said, No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself. And in the same spirit, no one is more vulnerable than the person who refuses to face what stirs inside them. True strength doesn't come from pretending to be untouched. It comes from seeing exactly how you are being touched and choosing your response from a place of clarity. Labeling an emotion is the first act of courage. It requires honesty. It requires vulnerability. It requires the ability to say without flinching, "This is anger. This is fear. This is grief. This is envy." You don't have to act on it. You don't have to be consumed by it. You simply have to see it. Because the moment you name an emotion, you shift from being inside the storm to becoming the one observing it, instead of being overwhelmed by a vague, powerful force. You step back and say, "I am experiencing frustration right now." That tiny shift from identifying with emotion to witnessing it is profound. You are not the emotion. You are the one watching it. And in that witnessing, you create space to choose, space to breathe, space to respond with wisdom instead of impulse. Once you've labeled the emotion, the next step is acceptance. Acceptance doesn't mean resignation. It doesn't mean you agree with the feeling or allow it to control you. It simply means acknowledging what is here is here. Denying the existence of anger or fear doesn't erase them. It only gives them more hidden power. Once you've learned to label and accept your emotions, you're no longer fighting reality. You're learning to work with it. And what is that reality? To be human is to feel a wide, messy, complex spectrum of emotions. No one is exempt. Not the wise, not the disciplined, not even the strongest. The difference lies not in the absence of emotion, but in the ability to face it without being broken by it. Think of emotions like weather patterns. Some days are full of sunshine. Other days bring storms. You don't stand in the rain and scream at the sky, demanding it to stop. You accept that it's raining, and then you act accordingly. Seek shelter. Slow your steps. Wait for the clouds to pass. Emotions are the same. Acceptance allows you to move through emotional storms with steadiness and grace. Marcus Aurelius often reflected on life's challenges, not as injustices, but as simple facts to be accepted. He once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." To apply this to your emotions means understanding. I may not control what I initially feel, but I can control what I do with it. And that control begins the moment I recognize and accept what has arisen within me. There is a kind of humility in this process. The humility to admit that we are not always rational, not always calm, not always noble. The humility to acknowledge that we are moved by fear, by anger, by longing, by sorrow, sometimes all at once, within the same hour. And yet, within that humility, there is also a quiet dignity. Because when you accept your emotions without judgment, you begin to reclaim your agency. You are no longer a puppet pulled by hidden emotions you refuse to face. You become a conscious participant in your own inner life. Practice labeling your emotions gently. You don't need to dissect them endlessly. A simple acknowledgement is enough. This is anger. This is loneliness. This is hope. Practice accepting them with kindness, like welcoming an old friend at the door, not necessarily inviting them to stay forever, but acknowledging their presence with respect. I see you. I know you're here. And remember, emotions are temporary guests. They come and go. they pass through us. Like seasons, your task is not to freeze them, not to fight them. Your task is to recognize them, accept them, and let them move through you without becoming them. In the end, emotional mastery is not about feeling less. It's about feeling wisely. It's about being deeply alive to your inner world, without being ruled by it. It's about knowing I can feel anger without lashing out. I can feel fear without shrinking. I can feel sadness without drowning. Label, accept, breathe, choose. That is the quiet, unglamorous, yet profoundly powerful path to freedom. As you learn to name your emotions, accept them, and detach from them, you naturally step into a higher capacity, the ability to reframe, and in doing so, reshape your experience. Reframing is how you unlock choice. It's how you reclaim power over your inner landscape. This isn't about blind optimism or fake positivity. It's about realistic flexibility, the understanding that your first emotional reaction is often the loudest, but rarely the wisest. Is the practice of training your mind to question its own impulses, to hold its narratives up to the light and ask, is this really true? Start with awareness. When you notice yourself spiraling into negativity, pause. Name the thought clearly. I'm thinking I'm not good enough because I made a mistake. I'm thinking this failure defines my worth. That simple act of naming already weakens the invisible grip the thought holds. Because negative thoughts thrive in the dark, and when brought into the light, they begin to lose their power. Then challenge it. Is it really true that one mistake defines my entire value? That one rejection determines my future? That one bad moment proves I'm not worthy? The Stoics would smile here. They would gently remind us, you are not your circumstances. You are how you respond to them. Reframing also invites neutrality. Not everything must be labeled as good or bad. Sometimes events are just events, raw material for growth, for training, for strengthening your resilience. Marcus Aurelius often told himself, this is neither good nor bad. It simply is. And that neutral clarity becomes a quiet superpower. It allows you to meet life with open hands, not clenched fists. Over time, reframing becomes less about fighting negativity and more about forming a new habit of thought. A habit of seeing possibilities where you once saw dead ends. A habit of interpreting setbacks as lessons, not verdicts. A habit of showing yourself compassion instead of condemnation when you stumble. That doesn't mean pain disappears. Life will still hurt you. But when you know how to reframe, the wounds become teachers, not life sentences. Pain becomes something you move through, not something you build your identity around. And yes, it takes daily practice. Some days, will come naturally. Other days, old thought patterns will pull you back, heavy and loud. That's what real transformation looks like. Uneven, imperfect, human. But each time you pause, each time you question, each time you choose a better thought, you are rewiring your mind toward freedom. Ultimately, reframing is an act of emotional sovereignty. It is saying no to being ruled by the worst version of your thoughts. It is choosing to see yourself, your life, and your struggles through a lens that makes you stronger, not smaller. Ask yourself often, what else could this mean? What's the most empowering way to see this? What would someone wiser than me see here? And in those questions, you loosen the grip of negativity. You make space for wisdom. You create room for peace. You become the author of your inner world, not just a character tossed by every fleeting thought. And that quietly, patiently changes everything. As you practice reframing your thoughts with compassion, you'll begin to realize a powerful truth. True understanding always begins within. We often think of empathy as something we offer to others. But in truth, every act of kindness starts with the way we treat ourselves. To practice empathy toward others is to remember that everyone is fighting invisible battles. The anger of a stranger, the coldness of a friend, the betrayal of someone you trusted, these are rarely born from pure malice. More often, they are symptoms of unspoken wounds, fear, or unmet emotional needs. The Stoics understood this deeply. They didn't teach us to avoid anger because injustice doesn't exist, but because anger clouds our judgment. Marcus Aurelius once reminded himself, whenever you're about to find fault with someone, ask yourself, what fault of mine closely resembles the one I'm about to criticize? When you begin to see the humanity in others, you're not excusing wrong behavior. You still uphold your boundaries, but you begin to soften the harsh judgment that quietly poisons your inner peace. You learn to say, this person's actions hurt me, but it came from their own struggle, not from my worth. Empathy is not about absorbing other people's emotions. It's about understanding them deeply enough so they no longer control you. It's about seeing anger without answering it with more anger. It's about holding your ground while the world around you spins in chaos. So what about compassion for yourself? In many ways, that's even harder. We are often our own harshest critics, more ruthless to ourselves than to anyone else. We forgive others for their mistakes far more easily than we forgive our own. We offer grace to friends, but judge ourselves for the exact same flaws. Practicing self-compassion means having the courage to see yourself with the same gentleness you offer others. It means saying, I'm imperfect, and that doesn't make me unworthy. It means accepting that growth is messy, mistakes are inevitable, and you are always a work in progress. Seneca once said, no man becomes great all at once. Mastery is not about being flawless. It's about how you face your flaws when they show up. There will be days when you lose your temper, days when you let fear take the wheel, days when you fall short of your own ideals. Compassion doesn't let you off the hook. It holds you to the fire with love. It asks, what can I learn from this? How can I grow a little wiser, a little stronger? True self-compassion is rooted in responsibility. It says, yes, I made a mistake. I own it, but I am not defined by it. I will learn. I will keep going. When you treat failure not as a dead end but as a doorway, you begin to transform pain into wisdom. The practice of empathy for others and compassion for yourself creates a mind that is both sharp and soft. Sharp enough to see clearly, soft enough to respond wisely. It keeps bitterness from taking root. It keeps your heart flexible, even when the world gives you every reason to harden it. Empathy teaches you to be patient with others. Compassion teaches you to be patient with yourself. Together, they create a kind of emotional strength that isn't loud or violent, but unshakable. Every day brings chances to practice. When a coworker snaps at you, when a stranger cuts you off in traffic, when a friend disappoints you, when your own mind attacks you for something small. In every moment, you have a choice. React blindly or respond mindfully. Close off or stay open. Drown in judgment or rise into understanding. That choice isn't always easy, but it is always yours. And every time you choose empathy over rage, compassion over criticism, patience over blame, you become stronger, not through force, but through grace. After you choose empathy over judgment, compassion over criticism, something begins to shift. Not in a brittle way, like someone trying not to be hurt, but in the quiet, steady power of someone who simply cannot be broken. Practice empathy. Practice compassion for others and for yourself. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, your world begins to transform from within. 9. Taking full responsibility for your reactions there. An invisible line between what happens to you and what you choose to do with it. Most people never cross it. They go through life in a loop, constantly blaming circumstances, other people, fate as if their emotions were puppets controlled by someone else's hand. But true freedom, the kind no one can take from you, begins the moment you accept a simple, powerful truth. You are responsible for your reactions, not for what happened, not for what someone else said or did, but for how you interpret it, the thoughts you dwell on, and the actions you choose in response. In Stoic philosophy, this distinction is sacred. Epictetus wrote, "We are not disturbed by events, but by the views we take of them." Notice he doesn't deny that events can hurt. He simply refuses to grant them absolute power over our inner lives. Taking full responsibility doesn't mean self-blame. It doesn't mean shaming yourself every time you feel anger or sadness. It's about ownership. It's the quiet but powerful act of saying, "My peace, my growth, my integrity, these are mine, and I am the one who must protect them." When you refuse to take responsibility, you hand over your inner world to chaos. You let a stranger's rudeness dictate your mood. You let a failure define yourself. You let external storms decide whether you stand firm or fall apart. But when you choose responsibility, you reclaim your sovereignty. You begin to live from the inside out instead of the outside in. This shift isn't easy. It demands radical honesty. It asks you to stop waiting for apologies that may never come, to stop waiting for better conditions before allowing yourself to be calm, centered, whole. And most of all, it requires you to let go of the comfort of excuses. There's a strange comfort in blaming others. It relieves us of the hard work of change. It paints the world as the villain and us as helpless victims. But comfort is not freedom. True freedom is uncomfortable. It demands the courage to admit, "I chose this thought. I fed this emotion. I acted on this impulse." Responsibility doesn't mean perfection. You'll still feel the sting of anger, the weight of sadness, the tug of fear. You're human, but with responsibility, you catch yourself faster. You step back sooner. You become the one who drives the car, not the passenger being pulled around by every emotion. Marcus Aurelius, facing betrayal, war, and the burden of empire, wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. That strength isn't found in controlling the uncontrollable. It's found in mastering what has always been within your reach, your interpretation, your intention, your response when you begin to take full responsibility for your reactions." Transformation happens quietly. Criticism no longer destroys you, it teaches you. Setbacks no longer define you, they refine you. Other people's chaos no longer becomes your inner climate. You become like the steady sky, unaffected by the storms below. This doesn't mean you excuse bad behavior. Setting firm boundaries is also part of responsibility. But even when you speak up or take action, the energy behind your response is your choice. Will you act from panic or from principle, from impulse or from intention? Responsibility is emotional strength in disguise. It's the invisible armor that protects your peace in a noisy world, the internal compass that keeps you grounded, no matter which direction life pulls you. Previously, we explored how taking full responsibility for your reactions becomes a form of inner power. But remember, this is not a one-time achievement. It's a discipline you return to again and again. Every single day, life offers you countless chances to practice. When someone cuts you off in traffic, when a friend lets you down, when your carefully planned day falls apart. In each moment, life quietly asks you, will you react blindly or respond consciously? Will you blame more? Will you own? These daily moments may seem small, but they build you. Each time you choose to respond instead of react, you're laying another brick in the foundation of your character. A character that is not easily shaken by other people's behavior. A character that remains grounded even in the chaos of unpredictability. This is how resilience is built, not loudly, not dramatically, but in silence. It's not the kind of strength that needs to be seen. It's the kind of strength that simply is quiet, steady, unshakable. Taking full responsibility for your reactions is not just a self-help technique. It's a way of life. It's a declaration that I will no longer be a victim of things outside my control. I will live anchored to my values. I will choose my response every time. Own your reactions. Own your peace. Own your life. 10. Releasing the weight, ego, pride, and grudges. There's a heaviness many of us carry without even realizing it. It tightens our chest, fogs our thinking, hardens our hearts. But this weight isn't made from what others have done to us. It's made from what we refuse to let go: our ego, our pride, our grudges. We often think strength means holding on, digging in, refusing to yield. But sometimes true strength is the quiet courage to release, to set down what no longer serves you, to stop gripping so tightly, and finally feel free. The ego tells us we must always be right, that every slight is personal, that any embarrassment is unacceptable, that if someone disrespects us, we must strike back. Pride says forgiving is weak, that moving on without revenge means surrender. Grudges whisper that anger keeps us safe, that if we keep replaying the hurt, we won't be hurt again. But the Stoics come clear, unflinching, saw through these illusions. They knew clinging to offense or pride doesn't protect us. It chains us. It traps us in bitterness and keeps us stuck in the very pain we wish to escape. Marcus Aurelius once asked himself, will you be angry with the world as if the world would notice? To carry bitterness is like drinking poison and waiting for someone else to suffer. Letting go of ego doesn't mean thinking less of yourself. It means needing less from others to feel worthy. When your ego is quiet, you don't crumble under criticism. You don't need to dominate conversations. You don't fear being wrong because being wrong no longer threatens your identity. Letting go of pride doesn't mean you lose your dignity. In fact, it's the opposite. Pride wants to win. Dignity just wants to do what's right. When you release pride, you can apologize without feeling small. You can forgive without pretending it didn't hurt. You can walk away without needing to win the argument. You can correct others without humiliating them. You can lead without stepping over others to stand tall. And letting go of grudges, that may be the hardest of all. Grudges feel righteous. They feel like protection. But in reality, they imprison us. We relive the hurt, again and again, long after the moment has passed. Forgiveness, at least in the Stoic sense, is not about pretending it didn't happen. It's not about excusing harm. It's about refusing to let it define your future. Seneca said it best. The best revenge is not to be like your enemy. You don't heal by becoming the pain that hurt you. You heal by breaking the chain, releasing ego, pride, and grudges. Isn't something you do once. It's a practice, a choice you must make daily, sometimes hourly, when the sting of criticism flares up, when your pride wants to lash out, when your ego whispers, don't let them get away with that. Pause, breathe, choose, because peace doesn't come from being right. It comes from being free. There is a quiet strength in knowing where you end and where others begin. In a world that often glorifies self-sacrifice and constant availability, setting boundaries can feel uncomfortably and selfish. But boundaries aren't walls that push people away. They're the framework that allows true connection, mutual respect, and lasting peace to grow. Healthy boundaries are acts of self-respect. They say, without anger or blame, this is what I need to stay well. This is what I will not tolerate. And this is the line I must draw if I want to live truthfully. Without these lines, even the most loving relationships can rot into resentment and imbalance over time. The Stoics didn't always speak explicitly about boundaries, but they lived by them. Marcus Aurelius understood the power of guarding his inner world from corruption and distraction. He once wrote, "Tranquility comes when you stop caring what they say or think, or do only what you do." That is the essence of a boundary, the conscious choice to remain rooted in your own values, no matter how the world pulls at you. Setting boundaries begins with self-awareness. You must ask yourself, what drains me? What nourishes me? What am I willing to give freely? And what must I protect? Without this clarity, you'll fall into overcommitting, people-pleasing, and burn out often before you even realize it. Once you're clear, the next step is communication.com. Honest, direct, no no apologizing for needing space or honoring your needs. Setting a boundary is not a confrontation. It's an act of truth. It might sound like, thank you for the invite, but I need this evening for myself. I'm not available to help with that right now. I value our relationship, and for it to stay healthy, I need us to agree on a few things. The language of boundaries is simple. The real challenge lies not in finding the words, but in having the courage to say them, and the strength to hold the line when tested, and you will be tested. Some people won't like your boundaries, especially if they once benefited from your lack of them. Yes, others may question your boundaries. They might guilt you, challenge you, or even push past your limits. That's their right, but it's equally your right and your responsibility to stand firm, without anger, without apology, without drama. Seneca once said, associate with those who are likely to improve you. Healthy boundaries are how you make that possible. They help ensure that your relationships uplift you instead of draining you. They preserve the space where growth, self-love, and mutual respect can truly take root. Clear communication, however, doesn't require cruelty. You don't have to raise your voice or shut people out to be taken seriously. In fact, the most powerful boundaries are usually the calmest. The most effective ones are spoken gently, yet firmly. They don't attack. They don't accuse. They simply state the truth. They say, this is my path. I walk it with openness, but I choose who walks beside me. Boundaries teach you a profound lesson. Peace isn't the absence of conflict. Peace is clarity. Peace is knowing what you need and honoring it. Every time you say no to what drains you, you say yes to what strengthens you. This is how your relationships shift from being driven by guilt or habit to being built on mutual awareness and conscious choice. And here's something many forget. You must honor your own boundaries first. It's not enough to set a rule with others if you constantly break it behind the scenes. If you say you won't answer emails after 8 p.m. but do anyway. If you say you need rest, but guilt makes you cancel it. Every time you break your own word, you chip away at yourself. You quietly teach others that your boundaries are optional. So let your word to yourself be sacred. When you respect your own limits, others will too. Setting boundaries is an act of love, not just for yourself, but for everyone around you. It creates clear expectations. It prevents hidden resentments. It invites open, honest relationships without the burden of unspoken frustration. And yes, it's an ongoing practice. There will be days when you're tempted to bend your rules to avoid conflict, win approval, or avoid feeling guilty. But don't. Because every time you choose your truth over your comfort, your inner strength grows. You prove to yourself that your well-being matters, not just in theory, but in practice. So speak clearly. Set your limits calmly. Protect your energy with wisdom. And as you do, your life will gradually become lighter, simpler, and undeniably freer. When the mind is restless, the body often carries that restlessness too. Stress isn't just something that happens in your head. It lives in your muscles, your breath, your posture. That's why movement matters. Walk, stretch, train. Let your body become a channel to move the stress through you, not let it stay stuck inside, even a few minutes of physical activity can turn anxiety from a looming storm into a passing cloud. Another essential tool is reframing your thoughts. Anxiety thrives in worst-case scenarios, imagining disasters, replaying past failures, exaggerating threats. Train your mind to challenge these thoughts. Ask yourself, is this fear true? Is it certain? Is it helpful? You'll find most fears lose their grip when questioned with clarity. Reframing isn't denial. It's choosing to see the situation in a way that empowers rather than paralyzes you. Journaling is another powerful outlet. When stress is swirling in your head like a storm, put it onto the page. Write without censoring. Don't edit, don't judge. Just let it flow out. The chaos inside often feels smaller and more manageable once it's outside your mind. By writing, you give shape to the shapeless, which makes it easier to understand and release. And sometimes, managing stress means asking for help. While Stoicism values inner strength, the Stoics also understood the wisdom of community and shared insight. Seneca exchanged thoughtful letters with friends. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself of lessons learned from others. Reaching out to a friend, mentor, or professional isn't weakness, it's wisdom. You may walk your path alone, but you don't have to carry every weight in silence. One underrated but deeply effective strategy is simplicity. Anxiety often grows from complexity to many tasks, to many commitments, to many demands. Simplify. Identify what truly matters today. Focus on that. Let go of the pressure to solve everything at once. As Seneca wisely put it, we suffer more in imagination than in reality. Complexity feeds that imagination. Simplicity grounds you in what's real, actionable, and manageable. Managing stress also calls for acceptance. Accept that some stress is part of life. Accept that anxiety, like the weather, will come and go. When you fight it, you feed it. But when you meet it with a calm, observing mind, it's here again. You disarm it. You become a witness, not a victim. And most importantly, these are practices, not performances. Some days your breath will ground you. Other days, anxiety may rise despite your best efforts. That's not failure, it's humanity. Mastery isn't about avoiding stress entirely. It's about cultivating the resilience to return to center, no matter how far you're pulled away. Build these tools into your life before the crisis hits. Make deep breathing part of your morning. Make movement non-negotiable. Reflect and simplify your evenings. These small daily choices create a strong foundation, one that holds you steady when the storms inevitably come. Managing stress isn't about avoiding all difficulty. It's about building a sanctuary within a calm, steady place that stays grounded even when the outside world is in chaos. You may not control the waves, but you can always become a better sailor. Let go of the idea that you must be flawless before you deserve peace, respect, or self-kindness. You don't. The truth is, your imperfections don't make you broken. They make you human. They are not failures to be erased, but fingerprints of your humanity. The Stoics understood this deeply. Marcus Aurelius, a Roman emperor, a philosopher, a man carrying unimaginable weight, didn't pretend to be perfect. In his private writings, he openly reflected on his flaws, his anger, his impatience, his struggles with frustration. He didn't run from them. He met them with clarity, with patience. He understood that the pursuit of progress mattered more than the illusion of perfection. And in that same spirit, self-compassion is not about making excuses for your mistakes. It's about meeting yourself honestly and gently where you are. When you stumble, and you will, self-compassion says, "Of course, I stumbled. I'm human, but I'm not defined by this one moment." When you fall short of your own ideals, self-compassion doesn't scream failure. It whispers, "I see where I need to grow, and I will keep trying." And when you completely fall flat, it reminds you, this too is part of the path. I'm still walking it. Without compassion, every small mistake becomes a personal verdict. Every flaw becomes a sign you're not good enough. And when that pressure builds, growth shrinks, courage disappears. The risk of trying again feels too dangerous. But with compassion, mistakes become feedback, not condemnation. They become teachers, not judges. You stop fearing failure, and you start learning from it. Seneca once said, "While we teach, we learn." In the same way, when we fail and reflect with patience, not punishment, we grow. Self-compassion is a discipline. It doesn't come naturally, especially if you were raised to believe that self-criticism is the only way to improve. But it's something you can practice, little by little. When you forget something important, instead of saying, "I'm so careless," you say, "I'm juggling a lot. It's okay. I'll create a better system." When anxiety hits, instead of calling yourself weak, you remind yourself, "I'm carrying a heavy load. I deserve care, not judgment." When you lose your temper, instead of drowning in shame, you pause and say, "That's not who I want to be. I see it. I'll do better next time." Each one of these small acts rewires your mind. They teach you something powerful. It is safe to grow, safe to make mistakes, safe to try again without losing your worth. And something beautiful happens when you embrace your own flaws. You become more patient with others. You stop expecting perfection in relationships. You allow space for errors, misunderstandings, and messy human growth. You lead with grace, not judgment. This doesn't mean giving up standards. It means grounding your standards in love, not fear. Real excellence doesn't come from the pressure to be perfect. It grows from the freedom to learn, to risk, to fall, and to rise again. When you accept your imperfection, you stop pretending and start healing. You give yourself permission to breathe, to be whole, not just polished. And in that shift, everything changes. The pressure lifts. The weight of pretending drops. Yes, the cracks remain. The rough edges stay. But now, they don't define you. They deepen you. To grow is to live. It's the belief that who you are today is only the starting point, not the final version. This is the foundation of resilience, self-mastery, and a life that doesn't shrink under pressure, but expands from within. A growth mindset is not just a theory in a book. It's the way you approach every failure, every victory, every wave of emotion with the quiet understanding that you're not finished. And you don't need to be in order to keep evolving. The Stoics understood this deeply. Their philosophy wasn't about becoming untouchable. It was about becoming adaptable, because they knew life will never bend to our desires. It will break, rebuild, challenge, and surprise us. Wisdom isn't found in demanding ease. It's found in becoming the kind of person who can meet reality with steady hands and an open heart. To develop a growth mindset is to reframe struggle as invitation, not condemnation. To see failure not as proof of inadequacy, but as evidence of effort. To recognize setbacks not as verdicts, but as open doors asking, what is this here to teach me? How can I grow from this? From that soil, emotional balance begins to grow. Not the absence of feeling, but the ability to experience every emotion without being swallowed by it. To grieve without despair. To feel anger without harming. To feel fear without freezing. To return again and again to your inner stillness. No matter how far life pulls you off center, picture two trees in a storm. One is stiff, rigid, unyielding, and it snaps under pressure. The other bends and sways with the wind, yet remains rooted. It survives not by resisting reality, but by flowing with it. That is emotional balance, not the refusal to feel, but the refusal to break. A growth mindset also teaches you to expect imperfection, not to excuse it, but to accept it as part of being human. It helps you approach emotions with curiosity. Instead of fear, when anger rises, you ask, what boundary needs to be protected? When sadness visits, you ask, what am I grieving, and how can I honor it without drowning? When fear whispers, you ask, what risk am I afraid of, and what does that reveal about what I care most about? Emotional balance does not mean apathy, it means presence. It means staying with yourself through every wave without needing to suppress, dramatize, or escape. It is the calm voice that says, I feel this and I can handle it. Marcus Aurelius, facing war, betrayal, and plague, reminded himself, if you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment. Within that single insight lies the heart of inner strength, the power to govern your inner world, even when the outer world is chaos. To build a growth mindset and emotional balance, you must practice daily, not occasionally. Celebrate effort more than outcome. Forgive your own mistakes, not to avoid responsibility, but to keep moving forward. Find value in the attempt, not just the result. This journey requires humility to admit you will never be a finished product. There will always be more to learn, more to refine, more to rediscover within yourself. It also requires courage, the courage to try again, to feel deeply, to fail and not lose faith in your becoming. You will stumble. Some days will feel like too much. You may fall hard and wonder if you can get back up. But every time you do, every time you choose to stay engaged with your life instead of running from it, you are building the quiet strength of resilience. Just like muscle, it grows only through challenge and effort, and with time, that voice in your head saying, "You're not good enough," begins to fade. The fear of not being perfect starts to loosen its grip. You stop asking, "Am I enough?" and begin to ask, "How can I grow stronger?" You stop fearing failure and begin respecting it as your greatest teacher. You stop trying to control life, and instead, you learn how to meet it moment by moment, with calm and power. When you commit to a growth mindset and emotional balance, even life's harshest seasons no longer feel like something you must survive. They become something you actively shape, something you rise to meet with intention. Emotional mastery is not about becoming untouchable. It's not about building walls so high that nothing can reach you. It's about standing open and steady, in the center of your being, feeling everything fully, but choosing how you respond to it. It's about recognizing the first flicker of anger before it turns into flame. It's about hearing fear whisper, but not letting it lead. It's about meeting sadness, anxiety, pride, and pain, not as enemies, but as messengers. When you understand your emotional triggers, when you notice the body's signals, when you build that sacred pause before reacting, you reclaim a freedom the world will never hand you. It's a freedom you must build within, through daily mindfulness, deep self-awareness, naming and accepting your emotions. You learn to live in the present with courage and clarity. You start reframing the thoughts that once held you captive. You practice empathy, not just for others, but for yourself. You take radical responsibility for your emotions. You no longer blame the world for the weather inside your mind. You release the quiet burdens, ego, pride, grudges, the thieves of peace. You set boundaries calmly and clearly. You speak your truth without aggression or apology. You learn to ride the waves of stress and anxiety, not by stopping the storm, but by mastering your inner vessel. Above all, you begin to accept who you are, beautifully imperfect, always unfolding, still becoming. You choose growth over stagnation, flexibility over control, presence over panic. And you realize something. This journey is not linear. It's not clean. It doesn't end today, tomorrow, or even a year from now. It is a lifelong practice, a daily decision to return again and again to that deeper place inside where peace is not given by the world, but forged by your own intention. So let me leave you with this. You don't need to be perfect to be powerful. You don't need to be fearless to be free. You only need to be willing to see, willing to feel, willing to choose just a little better, day by day. Master yourself gently, forgive yourself fiercely, walk steadily, and trust that every pause, every breath, every act of compassion, every moment you respond instead of react, is building a life of quiet, unshakable strength. If this journey spoke to something inside you, I invite you to like this episode, share it with someone you care about, and walk this path with me. Every step matters. Every step counts. Until next time, stay present, stay grounded, and keep choosing the strength within you.